Well, Matt, I mean, we don't really have to introduce ourselves here, but I tell you, we have a lot of breaking news to talk about in this Major League Baseball winter meetings, and also we have a trade alert here, as Kyle Tucker is now going to the Chicago Cubs, and also Devin Williams is going to the New York Yankees, and Nestor Cortez is going to Milwaukee in that trade.
As well as Caleb Durbin, one of the Yankees' most underappreciated prospects, is also going to Milwaukee. So to recap, the Yankees are doing a 2-for-1. So Nestor and Caleb Durbin are going to Milwaukee, and Kyle Tucker is going to the Chicago Cubs. And a lot is going on in baseball, Loro. Like a lot of signings have been happening, and I usually we have our own little discussion beforehand, but we had to hop right into this because so much is going on as we speak.
Well, and then Isak Paredes is going to Houston in that deal.
That's actually a really interesting signing. I mean, the Astros, they did not want to send Kyle Tucker to the Yankees. There was like a big package that apparently the Yankees had. They were going to give up Luis Gil, Ben Rice, and a couple other prospects in exchange for Kyle Tucker, but the Astros don't want to trade with the Yankees, so they got Isak Paredes instead.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And then talk about the Dodgers still in on Teoscar Hernandez. I mean, I'm hearing that he might not want deferrals, but it doesn't mean the Dodgers will keep him.
See, here's the thing, and one of the things I talked to off air yesterday was the fact that the Dodgers have over $1 billion in deferrals, and I don't think they can afford to do more deferrals. They're already doing it with Otani, they're doing it with Betts, they're doing it with Freeman, and now they're doing it with Blake Snell, which we'll get into in a second. But you can't have all these deferrals for all these players because then you're going to be financially crippled in future years. And I think the last thing the Dodgers want is for that to happen.
Well, they still want to spend money on players. That's why they do these deferrals.
Right. So, but the thing is, like, if you're going to do deferrals, you got to have the money ready in a certain amount of time. That's the only problem.
Well, the Boston Red Sox made a splash here. They got Garrett Crochet. In my show league, he was a reliever last year, but the Red Sox are going to convert him to a starter.
And that's actually kind of surprising because I thought that no one would want to do business with the Chicago White Sox, but supposedly the Red Sox had other plans. They talked to the Southside Chicago team, and Garrett Crochet, who wanted to get signed and traded during the trade deadline last season, finally has a new home, and I think he's going to be content being in Boston.
Oh, yeah, he's going to want to stay there for a very, very long time. But also, we got to talk about Juan Soto to the New York Mets. I mean, Steve Cohen has outbid Hal Steinbrenner for when it comes to the money. So I think Juan Soto is just going there for the money.
Well, I think that's the only explanation for it. So Juan Soto the top two options were the Yankees or the Mets, as many people had expected. And the Yankees, supposedly their last offer was 16 years, 760. The Mets offer that Juan Soto accepted was 15 for 765. The Yankees could not afford $5 million more dollars. They were going to be taking a hit with the cap financially if they did go over 760. So they had to do what they had to do, and they couldn't. And Juan Soto couldn't swing the other way. And one thing I wanted to mention, obviously, all you know I'm a Yankee fan, and I was a little bit upset when it first happened, but let me just give you the pitch that the Yankees gave to Juan Soto before they gave him the contract offer. So, according to NJ.com, the Yankees said that they outdraw the Mets at home games. More fans come to see the Yankees than the Mets. Both are true. They generate more revenue than the Mets. That's also true. The Yankees have a better ballpark for Soto. They have an easier path to the World Series than the Mets. That's absolutely true. And then as far as protection goes, there's protection in the lineup for the Yankees, having Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton there, whereas for the Mets, there isn't much protection besides Francisco Lindor. That was what the Yankees pitched to Soto, and he didn't take it.
Do you think now the Mets keep Pete Alonso?
See, that's the problem. I think Steve Cohen is all about spending as much money as he can to buy a championship. But when you invest $765 million into one player, it's going to be really hard to keep another star, especially the caliber of Pete Alonso, because you'd figure that Alonso would want $300-400 million for a new extension, but I don't think Steve Cohen is gonna take the bait on that one. I think Pete Alonso is gonna walk.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it, the New York. I think that if Pete Alonso doesn't stay, I'm kind of thinking that Mark Vientos moves over to first.
And that might be the only option that the Mets can do. And the problem with the Mets is they invested so much money into Juan Soto. You're kind of thinking long term, what's going to happen with people like Francisco Lindor? What's going to happen to people like Edwin Diaz? What's going to happen to people like Jeff McNeil and others? Like Soto got $765 million. He's 26. He's probably going to be there for the rest of his career. There's no deferrals in this contract, keep in mind. And I'm not sure if there's a no trade clause in this contract, but from what I understand and what you also understand, this is the richest contract in sports history. It beats Ohtani's contract by a lot.
Well, if Pete Alonso doesn't stay with the Mets, what is a potential fit for him?
That's a good question. I think the Yankees are trying to get in. I think if they don't get Christian Walker, then I think that there's probably a chance that the Yankees could probably scoop up Pete Alonso from Queens. I've heard that that's the biggest destination. I've heard maybe the Cardinals in the National League are a good destination for him. There's like a bunch of there are several teams, but I think the Yankees and the Cardinals are probably the two most interesting contenders out of the other 29 teams that could fit Pete Alonso's needs.
Does Willie Adames make the Giants a contender in the NL West?
Well, I can tell you this: the Milwaukee Brewer fans are not happy over the course of the last few days, but I think that Willie Adames is going to make the Giants a little bit better. I think that their batting order is definitely going to be better, but as far as how he fares, how the Giants fare as a team, I think there's still a lot of improvements that they need to make.
Well, the Dodgers also they got Blake Snell, they kept Blake Trinan, they got Michael Conforto. I feel like that those pickups are very, very good, but they also extended Tommy Edman, who I thought, and I think Tommy Edman's a big part of what the Dodgers do.
And it's funny you mentioned Blake Snell. I mean, the Dodgers pitching is loaded now that you got Blake Snell. And I think, as mentioned before, we mentioned this, they're preparing for life after Kershaw. I feel like that's what's going on here. And Tommy Edman had a really good postseason, so I was more than satisfied with the Dodgers keeping him and extending him. Blake Trinan was also a good keep. I just think that the Dodgers, if they're going to do anything, it's to bump up that rotation. Because the rotation last year, if you remember, in the postseason, even though they won the World Series, they were banged up. And I think they need depth more than anything.
Well, now the Dodgers, now that they lost Devin Williams in the trade, do you really think the Dodgers are going to chase after Tanner Scott?
That's an interesting one because Tanner Scott is one of those relievers that's actually very consistent. He's been a consistent reliever, and the Dodgers could use relievers. I mean, you can never have too many relievers for a ball club, and I think that for the Dodgers, I think getting Tanner Scott would be a really good pickup. I just think that they need to have a really good financial pitch to Scott in order to acquire him.
Well, with Tanner Scott, he could be their closer. He could be a lefty specialist. I think he's a guy that really can get. He really can get it done in key spots.
And I think the Dodgers are looking for that. I think the Dodgers, their only weak spot right now is their bullpen. Their bullpen was great in the postseason, but as said before, relievers are never something that you could just say, oh, we got a lot of relievers. The Dodgers could use as many pieces as they can for their title defense. But I want to get back to Teoscar Hernandez for just a quick second. You mentioned to me yesterday you were confident about getting him, but what number do you think you're going to have to give him in order for him to stay?
Probably 3 years, $80 million with a team option for a fourth year.
Interesting. That's a good number.
Because I'm kind of thinking that the Dodgers will willing to meet that request, which I think they will, even though that he doesn't want deferrals and all that. The Red Sox are probably the second tier to the Dodgers, but I still think Teoscar is going to be back as a Dodger. I think he really likes LA and he doesn't want to trade places and all that.
Yeah, because Teoscar Hernandez has bounced around too many teams. I think he just wants to find a home where he could just permanently say, I'm going to finish there for the rest of my career. But other signings that we got to discuss, and this actually made me happy. Max Fried is a New York Yankee. The Yankees signed him for a $218 million contract. I think it's a 6-year contract, $218 million. He's going to be the Yankees' official second starter. He's going to be in that rotation. It's going to be Cole, Fried, Rodon, Luis Gil, and I guess it's going to be Clark Schmidt now that Nestor's gone.
Well, I mean, you talking about Max Fried. I really think he makes that rotation good. The Yankees, I think, have done a good job shoring up that pitching staff, especially upgrading the rotation, upgrading the back end of the bullpen. Now I think they got to, find some bats and then to make up for the loss of Juan Soto. Anthony Santander still out there. I could see the Yankees going right after him.
And Santander is an actually interesting part of the equation because the Orioles thought that they could keep him, but Santander wants to take his talents elsewhere. He's been exploring the market. And if you look at the Yankees outfield, they only have like 4 outfielders, really 3 true outfielders that they could use. Obviously, Judge is the only guy that's going to stay in the outfield. But then you got Cabrera, who's a utility player. You can put him wherever you want. You got Trent Grisham, who's really not going to play a lot. And then you also got Dominguez, who I think with time and preparation could be really good now that Verdugo is gone. So the Yankees need depth in the outfield, and I think that if they acquire Santander, that could be something massive. Another name that's out there is Corbin Burns.
I wonder where he'll go. The Giants are a realistic spot, but I also think that I still think he'll be a New York Met just because he really has the connection to David Stearns.
Now, here's my question to you, and this is something that I should know, but I'm not 100% positive. Corbin Burns, the Scott Boras client, correct?
Yes.
Well, there you go, because Soto was a Boras client, and Boras helped Soto acquire that massive contract. And I think money talks. That's one thing I got to mention. Money talks, as we've learned, and it's pretty obvious that David Cohn has it. Or Steve Cohn has it.
Yeah, Steve Cohn definitely has all that money, but I mean the Mets, that lineup's going to be scary good with Juan Soto.
And then I think the problem with the Mets is, and I mentioned this before, this was part of Hal Steinbrenner's pitch, you got a lot of established guys on that Yankee batting order. With the Mets, besides from Lindor, you don't really know what you're going to get. And the Mets had a really good postseason, but can you really rely on them to make it back to the NLCS 2 years in a row, even adding Juan Soto, but potentially losing Alonso? And that's the big question there.
That's probably, that's probably a tough question there, but I also want to ask you here, the Dodgers are one of the teams that are linked to Nolan Arenado. Does the trade happen with Arenado to the Dodgers or no?
He's one of there's several teams that are looking after him. Arenado could probably be a good player to go to any team. I think the Dodgers might be aggressive in trying to get him. I think he could fit into that lineup really well.
Basically, based on what I heard, the Dodgers are out. Brandon Gomes, the general manager, said that Max Muncy is going to be the Dodgers starting third baseman.
So this is interesting now. I've heard the Yankees are also in the Arenado conversation because Jazz Chisholm originally plays outfield, but when the Yankees acquired him in the trade from the Marlins, he switched to third because they really didn't have anything going at third base. So now it's like if the Yankees acquire Arenado, is he your everyday third baseman? And then what do you do with Chisholm in that case? So I think after Soto signed that massive contract, the pieces are starting to fall for all these teams. They're starting to make their moves. And I think that there's still a couple big names out there. Like I said, Santander, Corbin Burns, Nolan Arenado's still out there. And then a lot of the pieces have fallen. But so far, this has got to be the wackiest offseason for baseball in a while.
Oh yeah, this is probably far one of the best off seasons in a while. But let's talk some football here. Thursday night football. We didn't get to pick that game yesterday. It was an ugly game, but a win for the Rams. And as for the Niners, they look tired and done.
They just look so fatigued, so burned out, so banged up with injuries. And that game was as ugly of a game as you could possibly get for two people trying to contend for the NFC West. I think the Rams are not out of the NFC West race just yet, but I think Seattle might try to pull away.
Well, talking about week 14 last week, I mean, the Patriots were on a bye week. The Lions, they got a gritty win over the Green Bay Packers last week. And then the Miami Dolphins beat the New York Jets on the first play of overtime with a touchdown.
That's crazy. I mean, the AFC East is kind of out of hand, but the Dolphins are still trying to fight. They're trying. I mean, they're 2 games out of a wild card spot, but they're not giving up. And I think that if you're the Miami Dolphins owner, Stephen Ross, you gotta like what you're seeing out of Mike McDaniel and how he's been coaching despite losing Tua for the beginning of the year. But I think the questions about Mike McDaniel have already been answered. He's a good coach. He's a good play caller. He's a good offensive mind. But the team was just not ready to make the playoffs after taking that hit with Tua earlier in the year.
Well, and then the Lions-Packers game. I mean, we thought Green Bay was going to win this game, but Detroit is yet to lose. Hasn't lost a game in a long time.
Since week 2 specifically. But the Lions are, I think, one of the best. I mentioned this before. They're the best team in football. And they won that game. They earned that game against the Packers because a lot of the people that they had playing defense were second-string defensive players. And they pulled it off against the Packer offense that threw everything in the kitchen sink at them. And the Lions are close to clinching number 1 seed in the NFC. The Eagles are hanging tough, but the Lions are legit. I think they can make a run in the playoffs.
Well, and then you talk about the Seahawks last week defeating the Arizona Cardinals 30-18. I mean, I thought Arizona was going to win, but Arizona's on a little slide right now. But if Seattle wins out, they're going to be the NFC West champions.
And you know what? I know we picked Seattle to finish last place this season in the NFC West, but they have done everything right. They've made a lot of good plays. Geno Smith's doing everything he can to keep the team afloat. And I think that win against the Niners a few weeks ago, I think, gave them life, and they've taken advantage of it.
Well, obviously for the Bears here, I mean, they lost their first game in the Thomas Brown era. So I had to say that this was probably it was a bad performance by the Bears.
I think the Bears are just waiting for the season to be over. It's just been a nightmare going against the Niners in Santa Clara, and also just getting pounced on from the beginning. Like, the Bears had absolutely no chance. And the unfortunate part for them is I don't think Thomas Brown is the guy. So they got to go deep into their bag of tricks for the offseason and find a really hard-nosed head coach, because right now they don't have one.
Talk about the Rams before Thursday night. They beat the Bills 44-42.
Despite Josh Allen scoring 6 total touchdowns, I think this Rams team, if they get the NFC West Division title, this team could absolutely make a run for the playoffs. I think they could. And plus, they have Seattle's number in recent years. So if you're the Rams, if you're looking at Week 18 and you're basically saying, you know what, we have a shot at winning the division, look at that game in Week 18 at the very beginning of 2025. You have a shot. You just got to keep your foot on the gas pedal if you're the Rams.
Well, from one LA team to another, the Chargers played the Chiefs again. I was at the game in Week 4 where the Chiefs beat them by a low margin.
Yep.
The Chiefs beat them again on a game-winning field goal. And the Chiefs are AFC East champions in the worst way possible. But I tell you, we can't see this over and over again with the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes.
It's just becoming a consistent thing with this team. And when they did keep the game-winning field goal with their 4th-string kicker that doinked off the crossbar and went in, it's just like, How can you can't make this up with the Chiefs? It really isn't. And they're probably going to get the number 1 seed because I think Buffalo losing to the Rams last week was a big, big, big thing for them. So I think the Chiefs are on their way to getting the 1 seed, but I think you can't play with your food in the playoffs. When you're playing with your food in the playoffs against a competitive team, because the AFC, like we said, is the best conference in the NFL, bar none. They are way better than the NFC. Someone's going to come out and punch the Chiefs in the face. And if they can't deal with that, then they got no chance of a three-peat.
Well, for Monday Night Football, the Bengals, they kept their playoff hopes alive with a big win over Dallas. And you talk about this game, Joe Burrow having another good game. The Bengals finally got it done after lots of heartbreak prior.
And you know what? I'm proud of the Bengals because they did it at the expense of the Dallas Cowboys. And if you watch the Simpsons cast, it was actually kind of entertaining. I'm not going to lie. Watching Bart and Homer Simpson throw the football to their respective friends and family. But the Dallas Cowboys, I think, just officially ended their playoff hopes losing a game like this. The Bengals, I think, are a long shot to make the postseason because they got 3 games. They have 3 games left, and they don't have a lot of time left. But it's just what could have been for Cincinnati. They just got to keep winning, and they got to hope that the dimes fall for the Broncos and the Chargers. They got to win out.
Well, now we got to let's talk about the rest of our Week 15 picks. So the Washington Commanders go to New Orleans to take on the Saints. This is the homecoming for Jaden Daniels since he played his college football in the state of Louisiana. I'm going to say the Commanders get this victory.
I'm going to say the Commanders win as well. I think that Darren Rizzi has coached the Saints very, very efficiently, but I don't think that it's going to be enough to overcome a Commanders team that's really good.
Kansas City in Cleveland. I mean, that's a team Kansas City should beat pretty handedly, but other teams are just giving them their run for their money, and the refs are continuing to help out the Chiefs. Can we finally see a Chiefs blowout victory here in Cleveland?
If the Chiefs don't blow out the Browns, then there's a massive problem. Because even though this team has won 15 games by 1 score, that streak's got to come to an end. Because you can't keep playing with fire and playing with your food, especially against a team like the Browns. If they do this again, then that's a bad sign for things to come.
Zach Taylor and Brian Callahan go head-to-head in Nashville. The Bengals and Titans will go head-to-head in Nashville. I'm going to go Zach Taylor over Brian Callahan here.
The Bengals have a lot more to offer. The clock is ticking, and I think the Bengals are going to try to put up more, are going to try everything they can to stay relevant.
The Miami Dolphins visit the Houston Texans. This is not the cold because the Dolphins can play well in roof stadiums, so I'm going to pick the Miami Dolphins to beat the Houston Texans. I know Houston's going to win the division, but I think Miami's playing really good right now.
This is a tough one. This is tough. Tua does really well in indoor and warm weather. I'm going to say it's a close one, but I think Jason Sanders kicks the game-winning field goal and Miami wins.
The Baltimore Ravens visit the New York Giants. I don't know if you want to watch that game because the New York Giants lost by 3 to the Saints last week. Tommy Cutlets is back. Drew Lock is hurt. I think Baltimore should steamroll the Giants.
Just end the season. Just end the season for the Giants. I'm going with the Ravens as well. In a blowout.
The Jacksonville Jaguars are hosting the New York Jets. Talk about a team that is in the toilet bowl.
Both these teams are in the toilet bowl. They're both 3-10.
I'm going to say Jacksonville gets the win. I want to see Jacksonville get this victory with Mac Jones beating the New York Jets.
There's no sugarcoat for each team, but I'm going to say Jacksonville takes it.
The Dallas Cowboys visit the Carolina Panthers. I mean, is it too little too late for the Dallas Cowboys to be making a playoff push? I'm going to say this. I'm going to pick Carolina to win. Dallas is probably going to be favored to win, but I'm picking Carolina because I want to dedicate that win to my man, Stephen A. Smith.
So, people who are not aware, if you're not aware, then be aware, that the Carolina Panthers over their last 5 games have put up a hell of a fight. They beat the Saints. They beat the Giants. They almost shot the Chiefs. They put up a close effort the week before that against the Buccaneers, and then they almost knocked off the Philadelphia Eagles. 5 straight close games. They've won 2 of them. This is a team that started off so badly to begin the season, but Bryce Young has turned things around, and I'm really, really impressed with how he's handled adversity. In regards to this game, I think the Cowboys are going to officially lose out on the playoff hopes. I think that Carolina is going to absolutely shock the Cowboys at home, and I think Bryce Young gets a win.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, if you look at it, I think that the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott makes them a better team, but, they basically season's over for the Dallas Cowboys. We said it.
Yeah, it's not looking good at this point. It's not officially over, but it's looking like it.
Now we go on to our 4:25 Eastern time games. First up, Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm picking the Chargers in this game because they suffered a tough loss in Kansas City. They're a team that is still going to make the playoffs, in my opinion.
You know what? I think the Chargers are going to bounce back from that tough loss in Kansas City. I don't know how the Chiefs get away with these wins, but I think Jim Harbaugh has coached his team very well so far this season. I think that they outplay the Buccaneers. I'm taking the Chargers.
The Denver Broncos take on the Indianapolis Colts. Battle of good young quarterbacks that have bright futures, but I think Bo Nix gets the victory.
So, as far as the playoff race in the AFC is concerned, the Colts are 2 games back of Denver. If the Broncos lose this game, then things get interesting. I think the Broncos are going to be fine. I'm taking Denver.
Patriots are back from a bye week, and we begin a tough stretch to end the season, starting with Arizona to play the Cardinals. This might be a trap game for Arizona. So I want to pick New England to get this victory.
This is an interesting one. Arizona, like you said before, is on a little bit of a slump, and they need to break it. So I'm going to take the Cardinals to win this one, especially because it's at home.
This will be the game of the year. In Detroit, Buffalo and Detroit, Josh Allen versus Jared Goff. These 2 teams last met on Thanksgiving of 22, and Josh Allen came out victorious, and he won the Madden Turkey Award. I'm going to say Josh Allen dominates the Lions here.
I'm going to say that the Lions' second-string defense is not going to get it done against Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen will officially mark himself as NFL MVP this season. I'm going to go with the Bills.
Who would have thought the Pittsburgh Steelers would still be winning against a team in the Philadelphia Eagles that still has a winning record? The Pittsburgh Steelers were projected to be bad. Their roster's not good on paper, but Mike Tomlin just continues to, coach this team the right way. This is probably going to be a great game in Philly. I'm going to pick the Philadelphia Eagles.
The Battle of Pennsylvania.
This is probably the best Pennsylvania rivalry over like Phillies and Pirates.
Oh yeah, big time. Big time. Like no question about it. So the Battle of Pennsylvania in the city of brotherly love, and Pittsburgh has really been surprising this year. I will give them credit. I will give Mike Tomlin his flowers. But I do think that Philadelphia, on a 9-game win streak, almost got shocked last week. And I think that they're going to get back to playing at a high level. I'm taking the Eagles.
Who is interested in watching the Packers play the Seahawks in prime time? They've had many memorable games, including the Fail Mary.
Yep.
Including the 2015 NFC title game where Jermaine Kearse caught the game-winning touchdown pass in overtime to send Seattle to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And here we are again. I'm going to pick the Green Bay Packers to win this football game.
Now, the Packers are coming off a tough loss in Detroit. They had the Lions right where they wanted them. Seattle can get really loud. I'm going to take the Packers as well. Tough one.
It's at Lumen Field. It's going to be crazy loud, you know?
Yep.
And no one thought Seattle would be this good. I was never high on them in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, but Geno Smith has proven everybody wrong yet again. He's done very well. And I think that, like I said, if he keeps up this momentum, let's see what happens in Week 18 when the Seahawks face the Rams, which could potentially be for the division title.
We got 2 Monday night games. Which one am I more intrigued about? None. But I would want to watch Bears Vikings because of Caleb Williams. I would want to watch that battle of USC quarterbacks. Raiders Falcons might be just one-sided. In this matchup, I picked the Bears to beat the Vikings back at Soldier Field, but that did not happen. So I got to pick the Minnesota Vikings to win this game. I just think the Chicago Bears are just waiting for the season to be over so that they can start the head coaching search, build around Caleb Williams, and also make some improvements on their defense in the offseason.
I think that Sam Darnold throwing 5 touchdown passes against the Atlanta Falcons just proved to a lot of people that this guy has what it takes to be a starter somewhere. It's not going to be in Minnesota in the future, but I think if you're the Raiders, if you're the Giants, you're looking at Sam Darnold and you're saying, we have something on our hands here that we could possibly pull. I think Sam Darnold continues his comeback player of the year push, and I think the Vikings win against the Bears.
Falcons taking on the Raiders. The Falcons are playing for playoffs. The Raiders they have a quarterback problem. And I'm like, why are the Raiders still in prime time? Because their roster's not good. It's basically boring every time you see the Raiders play. They're in a big market in Vegas where they should win, but they don't. Antonio Pierce makes them play hard, but they lose a lot of games. But I still think he's the right coach for the Raiders.
It's just a shame because they got a really good coach. They have a lot of discipline on that roster. Max Crosby probably wants out of Vegas in the worst way because none of the other 52 men on that roster are playing hard or helping them win. And now the people of Vegas are not even paying attention to their team anymore. They're more invested in the Golden Knights than they are with the Raiders.
Well, now we got to talk about so next week when we do the show, we will have 3 games to talk about to start. The Broncos and Chargers, that's going to be very intriguing.
Yeah.
Bo Nix versus Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud versus Patrick Mahomes, and then another round of the Ravens and Steelers rivalry.
That should be a really dandy schedule.
But now let's talk about some college football. Before we get into the good stuff and talk about the college football playoff bracket, Bill Belichick is now going to be the new head coach of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. With that, I'm very happy that he's back to coaching. I've always thought he's a good coach. A season ago, New England did him dirty, and he had to part ways with them after 24 years. But you know what? It's probably best for him to stay away from the NFL and just coach kids and make an NFL program with the North Carolina Tar Heels.
So when the news was confirmed, I was very surprised because Bill Belichick had built up a strong resume with the NFL, with the Patriots, obviously a 6-time Super Bowl champion head coach. But like you said, when he was trying to go for the Falcons head coaching job, not only did the Patriots do him dirty last season, Robert Kraft did him dirty by telling Arthur Blank bad stuff about Belichick. So, and all that stuff happened to be false. So Belichick got screwed over by the Falcons and by Robert Kraft. And I think him wanting to reset at the collegiate level is actually kind of intriguing. But I think the challenge for Belichick is going to be how does he do with recruiting? Because the difference between being an NFL head coach and a college head coach is college, you're recruiting across the entire country. NFL, you're looking at 134 Division One schools and trying to build a football team with the help of a general manager. But Bill Belichick was also a general manager when he was with the Patriots. So I think if you're Belichick, you have a lot to do. The media is now in your control. So Belichick, I think, is going to like the environment. I think him trying to build a program in North Carolina is going to be interesting. And plus, the ACC is not that good. So I think Belichick's got his work cut out for him. But I think he's got a good shot at doing well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's got the Miami Hurricanes that are still a very good team. You got Clemson and Dabo Sweeney. Bill Belichick probably puts the ACC on the map.
Yeah, and you mentioned the coaches over there in the ACC. Like I said, the conference is not fantastic. It's not like the SEC, but it's a very good conference for him to, start off in college football. And I think that's where he's going to probably finish his coaching career because like I said, I can't see him going back to the NFL after how he was screwed over. So I think college, it's going to be interesting. He's also going to have his son, Steve Belichick, as part of the coaching staff, which I think is also really cool.
Oh, that's going to be great. I mean, I'm thinking Freddie Kitchens will probably be his offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And then I think Steve Belichick will be his defensive coordinator.
Correct.
I'm thinking Josh McDaniels will be a pass game coordinator.
If you're Belichick, you might as well just brought what worked in New England to North Carolina. I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, the guy can do whatever he wants. The media is going to be controlled by him. I think people.
What if Brian Dable gets fired by the Giants? He's probably going to bring him along.
And honestly, I don't blame him. I think if you're Belichick, you want to have fun with this 5-year experience that you're going to get in North Carolina. And I think that you might as well just bring whatever worked in the pros at the college level. And I think it's going to be really well.
You know what? He said beat Duke, and I'm like, you know what? I don't like North Carolina when it comes to basketball.
Yeah.
I like North Carolina football.
Yeah. Yeah, North Carolina football, it's been struggling as of late. They fired Mac Brown earlier in the season, so they were trying to figure out how to put
Drake May went to that school. I tell you, it's working out well for the Patriots so far.
So I think maybe the ties to New England got Belichick the job. That's just my opinion. Because Mac Brown probably said something. Mac Brown, who was the head coach of UNC before Belichick got there, probably said something to the athletic director and said, you know what? This guy deserves a job. And Belichick did deserve a job. He got screwed over.
Well, let's talk about the college football playoff bracket predictions here. First, we'll start with the 8-9 game. Ohio State hosting the Tennessee Volunteers. In this matchup, I'm going to pick Ohio State to play Oregon.
It's going to be at the Shoe in Columbus. I'm going to take the Tennessee Volunteers for an upset.
Ooh. Want another Big Ten matchup in the playoff here.
Yep.
Clemson takes on number 5 Texas. I mean, I love Saban assistants. I'm going to go with my guy Steve Sarkisian to beat Clemson.
And the winner of that would play the 4 seed, which is Arizona State. That's correct. Dabo Sweeney usually does well in the college football playoff over the course of his coaching career. I think Texas is going to be a really tough matchup for this team in Clemson. I'm going to go with Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns as well. But keep an eye on the quarterback situation because they've been utilizing both Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning a lot lately.
Oh, they are. You're absolutely right. So I have Oregon and Ohio State, Arizona State and Texas. Now we go to the other side of the bracket. Indiana Hoosiers taking on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The winner of this game will be playing Georgia. I picked Notre Dame to play Georgia.
I think Indiana has not been battle tested at all. And when they played Ohio State, they got blown out. This is the Battle of Indiana, by the way. Indiana and Notre Dame are in the same state. So I'm going to go with the Fighting Irish. I think that this is a well-rounded football team, and they bounced back really nicely after losing to Northern Illinois earlier in the year.
Southern Methodist takes on Penn State. James Franklin doesn't know how to win big games. I think I like Penn State at home because it's going to be a whiteout at the stadium. I have Penn State going to Boise State.
I agree with you on that one. I think that SMU got in the playoffs by the skin of their teeth over Alabama, and I think that Penn State's going to hammer away on SMU.
Now let's go to the second round picks before we head to the semifinal. So Oregon and Ohio State. I pick Oregon to go to the semifinal, and then I will have Oregon play Texas.
I'm going to say Oregon remains undefeated. I think they beat Tennessee no matter what happens, whoever gets in the quarterfinals. And then I also think that in the matchup between Arizona State and Texas, I agree with you. I think Texas comes out.
And then going to the semifinal on the other side of the bracket, I have Georgia beating Notre Dame. And then I actually have Penn State beating Boise State to go to the semifinal. And I want James Franklin versus Kirby Smart in the semifinal.
That's interesting. So I think the thing with Georgia is you got to keep an eye on what happened with Carson Beck, because Carson Beck got hurt in the SEC title game versus Texas. You don't know how he's going to do if he does start. I think that Georgia would win against Notre Dame. But if Georgia does not have Carson Beck ready to go, I think Notre Dame could win. But I think pending Carson Beck, if he's healthy, I'm going to take Georgia in that one. And then Boise State, Penn State, I'm going to shock you. I'm picking Boise State because Ashton Jeanty, I think, is the best player in college football. And I think that even though they're not going to have the blue field to their advantage, I think that Ashton Jeanty is going to run all over Penn State's.
They will have the blue field just because they're well, my bad. It's not the blue field. It's a bowl game.
Yeah, so the quarterfinals to the championship are all bowl games.
And then to the semifinal, I got Georgia defeating Penn State, and then I got Oregon defeating Texas, and in my national championship pick, it's going to be Kirby Smart versus Dan Lanning.
So Texas, Oregon, I got Oregon going undefeated and going to the national championship game, and then Georgia versus Boise State. I'm going to take Georgia. I think that Kirby Smart is one of the best coaches in college football, and he's well equipped for semifinal situations like this.
And then who's going to the final? And then who I have winning between Oregon and Georgia in the national championship game? I'm going to pick Oregon, and Dan Lanning beats his former boss.
I'm going with Georgia because you can't underestimate Kirby Smart and the talent of this Georgia team. I think their defense has improved dramatically over the course of the season, and I think that Oregon, even though they're going into the national title game undefeated, they hardly ever close it out. So I'm going to go with the best coach in college football.
Well, and then now we got to talk about Heisman Trophy. Who will win? Do you think it's going to be a clear shoo-in with Travis Hunter?
I actually think that I want Ashton Jeanty to win. However, I am going to say I think that they're going to give it to Travis Hunter because he's a two-way player. I think that Travis Hunter is going to win a narrow margin of the vote to get the Heisman.
Well, now we're talking NBA here. You got NBA up final. The Bucks and the Hawks are playing, and then in the West, you got OKC and
I think it's Houston.
OKC and Houston. Who will play in the NBA Cup final? I'm going to say Milwaukee versus Houston.
I'm going to say Milwaukee and Houston as well. I think that the Hawks got in the semifinals because the Knicks tried to kill them with the threes, and it didn't exactly work. And I think Milwaukee's getting hot at the right time. And on the Western Conference side, I want to see the Houston Rockets do well. They've been bad for the last few seasons. They deserve better. So I'm going to go with the Rockets and the Bucks as well.
Well, Devondre Campbell is probably going to get suspended after refusing not to return to the game on Thursday Night Football. Was this basically the same situation as what Anthony Richardson did?
Very similar. And I think that, again, this is something that you got to not take for granted in the NFL. You have to be able to play every down with every part of your body, and you got to actually show commitment to your football team. And I think Devondre Campbell might actually get released. I think suspension is probably one thing, but I think he'll probably get released just because he just decisively said, I'm not going in.
Anyways, Matt, hope you have a good weekend, and that's going to do it for the show. We have more stuff to talk about next week, and hopefully we'll talk about Teoscar Hernandez coming back to the Dodgers. And have a good day, everybody.
Take care, everybody.